Hey everyone, welcome back to LightHearted. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Britton. If you listened to our first episode of season 2, then you know we talked about how people pleasing can really just leave you feeling drained, overcommitted, and honestly resentful about a lot of things. One of the biggest reasons people pleasers struggle, though, is because they have a lack of boundaries. So today, we are diving into a topic that a lot of people struggle with, us included, which is setting boundaries with the people we love without feeling like a terrible person.
Yeah. It's one thing to set boundaries with people that we don't have a deep connection with, but when it's family, close friends, or even a partner, it feels so much harder.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely this fear that setting boundaries means that we are mean. We're trying to be mean, or we're trying to be selfish, or we're pushing people away. But the truth is boundaries are actually really, really healthy, and they can strengthen relationships when they're done correctly.
So today we're talking about what healthy boundaries look like, how to communicate them in a kind but firm way, and what to do when people don't respect them. Okay, so before we talk about how to set boundaries, let's talk about why so many people struggle with it in the first place.
I think a really, really big reason for me as well is just feeling guilty. Yeah. So we feel like saying no or setting limits means that we're letting somebody down, which that's just it's not a good feeling to have and to have to sit with.
Yeah.
So especially when it's family or really close friends, we've been raised to believe that we owe them our time or our energy or emotional support, kind of no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're taught to believe. So when we try to set a boundary, it feels really selfish.
Right. And then there's fear. Fear of conflict, fear of hurting someone's feelings, or the fear that they'll take it the wrong way and feel like we don't love them.
Yeah, that's a really big one, I think. Yeah. All right, here's the thing though. Yay. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out, which I think is what gets so misconstrued, is that it's about being this is my boundary.
Most definitely, yeah.
That's not what it is. It's about creating healthy ways to stay in contact without sacrificing yourself in the process.
Yep. And honestly, when you set a boundary, you're giving that relationship a better chance to survive. Because let's be real, without boundaries, resentment builds up so fast.
Yeah, definitely. And we most definitely don't want that. I don't want that. You don't want that. So let's talk about some signs that might indicate a need for a boundary. If you're sitting here wondering, do I have people in my life that I should set boundaries with? I mean, the answer is probably yes.
Yeah.
Already the answer is probably yes, but let's go over some indications.
Yes. The first one is if you feel so drained after an interaction with someone.
Yeah. I think too, with everything that we're talking about today, there's going to be a time and a place for everything.
Right.
There are going to be times where you have to bend just a little bit, or there are going to be times where you know what, I just had an exhausting day. I'm not exhausted by you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So you know your life better than we do, but we're just telling you where to start.
Yeah.
So I think the next one is that you say yes out of obligation, not because you want to.
Yeah.
And again, time and a place, but if you catch yourself saying yes to a specific person over and over and over again, even though you don't want to.
Yeah.
That's probably a good time to double check that relationship.
I feel like we're all guilty of that at times too.
Yeah. I think it's an easy one to fall into.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Here's a big one that I don't think a lot of people think of. Feeling anxious when that person calls or texts you.
That's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
The pit in your stomach feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it.
I know.
Oh, I hate it.
It's not fun.
Okay. Another one is you're just constantly overextending yourself to keep the peace.
Yep.
Which I think we've all been there too.
It's a people pleaser thing.
It's a people pleaser thing. Yeah. So if you're just always working ultra hard so that things can be peaceful around you.
Yeah. Here's one that I struggle with personally, and I think a lot of us probably struggle with. Feeling guilty when we put our own needs first.
That's a big one.
Yeah. And again, time and a place for sure. But yeah.
I think it's hard because I think in life, a certain level of sacrifice is good.
Absolutely.
Right? Like it's good. But if you are just constantly sacrificing everything and you feel guilty for taking time for yourself, or you feel guilty for telling somebody that you're unable to accomplish something, like that's a tough spot to be in.
And I mean, we talked about it a ton in our people pleaser episode.
Yeah.
Because like it is a balance. There's so much balance to it.
Yeah. It's hard. But kind of like we mentioned earlier, like the key to maintaining healthy relationships is setting boundaries.
Yep.
Right? Like, because then nobody ends up feeling overextended or resentful or exhausted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So now we know why boundaries are important. Now let's talk about how to actually set them in a way that doesn't feel harsh or cold.
We're talking a lot about balance today.
A lot about balance.
All right. I think the very, very first thing that needs to happen that like is easy to double check is basically for you to make sure that you are being very clear and very direct.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us try to soften the blow by being super vague.
Yep.
Like we don't give all the details. So like I would just say like, oh, I just need some space sometimes. But like that sentence leaves way too much room for interpretation for the other person. So instead, like I have a couple examples of this that like I have used before. So instead of saying like, I'm just super busy today, like when I don't really want to hang out with somebody, or like I do want to hang out with them, I just genuinely don't have time.
Yeah.
I would say like, I would love to spend time chatting with you. I would love to catch up with you. I have 30 minutes that I can give you today.
Yeah.
Like, so being more direct about like what I can actually give that day. And again, like with balance, I'm like, if you're having a crisis and like you need me, I'm going to find time. Like we're going to make it happen.
Right.
But like, if it's just a normal day, like, and I have to stick to the stuff that I've committed to doing.
Yep.
Right. Like I can give you 30 minutes or I can do this tomorrow. I would love to do this with you tomorrow. But I think being really vague, we think it helps the relationship by being like, I'm just really busy. I'm so sorry. But it doesn't.
No, that just leads to disappointment and confusion.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
I think another way to communicate needs would be using I statements instead of blaming language. Instead of saying, you're too demanding, say...
Which we wish we could all say sometimes.
Right? Sometimes we do. Say something like, I need some time to recharge after work before I can talk.
Yeah, I think that always helps. I think when I was talking earlier about like being really clear, I think if you want to soften the blow, that is the best way to go.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, hi, like it's not you, it's me. I need some time to recharge before I can like come into this friendship like fully ready.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think another one is to offer a compromise if possible. I think it's important sometimes to like set really hard, clear boundaries.
Yep.
But I think if a compromise is possible, that's the best way to
absolutely
start, I guess. So boundaries don't have to be all or nothing. So for example, if your friend wants to hang out every single weekend, but that's just too much for you, like you cannot fit that in. I think it's okay to say something like, oh my gosh, I would love to catch up with you. I'd love to spend time with you. Right now I can do once a month. Does that work for you? Like which weekend works best for you? I think it's okay to like not be a jerk about it, but still advocate for yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think something that people get wrong about boundaries a lot is that they kind of put it on the other person and it does turn into them just being a jerk.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, Rachel, if you do this at my house, then I'm going to make you do this thing. And like, that's not a boundary. That's not what that is. Like that is just like you being kind of bossy.
Yeah.
Right. So like a boundary would be like, if, you know, uncle, whoever, if you speak like that in front of my child, then we will not be attending family dinner.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's like, here's what I am going to do about it.
Yep.
That I have control over. This is the boundary that I'm setting. And like other people are going to play into it. And like, sometimes you might come across like a jerk, but like,
yeah,
it's going to like, people are going to get offended sometimes and that's just going to happen.
That's just going to happen.
But it's not like, I'm going to do this to you. It's, this is what I'm going to, like, this is the power that I'm taking back for myself.
Absolutely.
I think that's a difference.
It will impact them.
Yes.
But it's not like, oh, a punishment.
I'm not like punishing them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people can like misuse the term setting boundaries and like the idea of it. Because some people will be like, I'm setting a boundary and they're being complete jerks.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, I'm setting a boundary and you're going to do this thing for me or else. Like,
no.
That's not what it is. Yeah. So I think it's okay to like draw a hard line on things and like some people will perceive it as you being a jerk still.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. But if you're doing it the right way,
and you know it's for the right reasons to protect yourself or your family or your kids or whatever, like, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So
also, I just want to say, like, if you're ever setting a boundary to keep your kids safe, like, be a jerk. Yeah. Like, you're going to hurt people's feelings because they just want to get their feelings hurt anyway. And so, you know, if you have to set hard lines, like, to protect your kids, like, I think that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think if you do any of these things, the most important thing to do would be to follow through. Mm-hmm. If you say you need space but keep saying yes out of guilt, people won't take your boundaries seriously. And then there's the opposite of that. If you say we're going to hang out once a month, you need to honor that.
I agree. And I think it's good to understand that, like, both ways matter.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's like, hey, I said that we could do this thing, like, honor that. Like, do it because you said you were going to do it.
Right.
Because then, like, I'm sure you've noticed this, like, the more often you can say yes to things, like, with specific people, right? Like, I know, like, with my son, like, he knows that I say yes a lot. So then when I say no to something, he's more likely to be like, oh, like, mom's saying no, she must have a reason.
Yep.
Like, he's a lot less likely to be like, but why? Because he's like, oh, she says yes a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that you can kind of, like, train, this is in quotes, everybody, train the people around you.
No, but I think, like, a lot of it, like, we all grow up needing parenting, and sometimes as adults, like, it's the same thing. Like, following through is a huge thing in parenting, and, like, every parent knows that. Like, that's one of the most important things. Like, if you say that this is a boundary or this is a punishment, you have to follow through with it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for adults.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it kind of sucks. Like, it feels weird being like, I'm holding this boundary with you, you grown adult. But, like,
sure.
Yeah, it's important. All right, so we have some examples of kind but firm boundaries, and you can kind of take these and fit them to whatever you want them to apply to if you're just really struggling, like, getting started.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of broke it up into 4 categories here. So with family, you could say something along the lines of, like, I love spending time with you. Start out positive.
Yep.
Have we talked about have we talked about the term crap sandwich on here?
Probably not.
I don't know if we have, but it's basically, like, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, where it's like nice thing, then mean thing, then nice thing, right? Because then it's like, hey, I love you so much and I'm not going to have time to do that, but, like, here's this positive thing, right? So I love spending time with you. I need to prioritize my mental health right now, so I won't be able to come to every family gathering.
Yep.
Like, that's so
direct.
So direct.
Clear instructions.
Yes.
And
not negative. It's just saying, like, hey, I'm really working on this thing. Or even, like, if you don't want to say mental health, like, I know some families that's kind of a buzzword. And so you could say, like, I love spending time with you and I'm working on this project and I'm really working on this thing and I can't
I just
come
need
to every
some
family
time
thing.
To myself right now.
I need some Britton time. I need some Rachel time.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yep. Agreed. The next category we have is with friends. Mm-hmm. So you could say something like, I can't text all day, but I'd love to set up a regular time to catch up.
Yeah, like, I value you. I just can't sit around texting all the live long day.
Exactly.
The next one we have is, like, with work, which I feel like this is such a hard one. Mm-hmm. But it is okay to respect your own time, especially when it comes for working for somebody else.
Yep.
So you can say, like, I'm happy to help with this during work hours, but I won't be checking emails in the evening anymore.
Yep.
Like, unless that is, like, put in your contract that you'll be checking work emails in the night, there's no reason that you should be doing that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I think it's okay to be respectful, but be clear.
I agree.
All right. And then finally, with a partner, husband, wife, business partner, whatever. It's okay. And my husband and I have done this where we say, hey, I need some alone time each week to recharge, but that doesn't mean I don't love spending time with you.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so true.
Like, but I look forward to date night.
Yep.
I just need some time to recharge before we go out.
I think that works with friends too.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, I love you and I just need this little thing so that I can be happier for you. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about what happens when you set a boundary.
Oh.
And then somebody does not respect it, because it's going to happen. So you need to be prepared.
Yeah. That's the worst. And unfortunately, it happens a lot, especially with people who are used to having unlimited access to you. Some people will push back, try and guilt trip you, or act like you're being completely unreasonable.
I feel like that's when I start to feel like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, am I just being insane right now?
Right.
Yeah. So I think something important to note is that the people who get upset about your boundaries are usually the ones who benefited the most from you not having any.
Oh, yeah. So true. And just because someone doesn't like your boundaries doesn't mean it's wrong to have them.
Yeah. I do think it's good to like, I don't know how to say this, but kind of just like it's good to start setting boundaries quickly with people, but I don't know if it's good to like set quick boundaries. Like,
right.
I think that's different. Like, I think it's good to like kind of be in tune with who you are and to be able to set boundaries quickly, especially like when you meet new people and stuff like that, or like you have friends in and out of your life or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to take time to think about what boundaries would actually like strengthen the relationship and like make you feel safe or whatever. Like, I think it's good to think about.
Oh yeah, it's going to take time. Don't just like watch this episode and be like, okay, I need to set boundaries now. And then sit down and really try and think of a list of things you could set and set them all at once and be like, just,
yeah,
because that's just going to set you up for failure and people that you love to be confused and hurt and angry. So I think taking your time and really thinking about it. I also think giving people a reset is important too.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot, and people are going to have their faults, and setting boundaries usually is an indication that someone has done something multiple times. Like, you're not just going to set a boundary because
you're like, don't do that.
You had one bad day and were mean to me, and I'm going to be like, okay, well, I'm no longer coming to your house and talking to you ever again. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what I'm going to do. But I think being able to like reset it and think of, here, I'll use this example because I cannot figure out how I want to say this. I saw this YouTube channel once that obviously people get negative comments all the time. They get harassment, all this negative stuff. And you block people. At the beginning of the year or the end of the year, whatever, they would reset their YouTube channel like block list. Which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But they would reset it because people make mistakes. Sometimes people say things that they don't truly mean. They're having a bad day. They reset it. And if that person does the same thing the next day, they block them again and they're blocked for the next year.
That's awesome. That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that it's good to evaluate that and to really like think about that.
Yeah. It's like the people in our life deserve that.
Yes,
like,
for sure.
Yeah. Like sometimes they need boundaries too, but like.
Because they're growing just as much as you're growing.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so good though to recognize that change is possible.
Yeah, because we're all growing and we're all changing. And so
yeah,
I think your boundaries need to adjust to you and the person that you have the boundaries set for.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, so we wanted to talk about how to handle pushback because it's going to happen. Like, people are going to push back because you're making changes.
Yeah.
And like we've already said, like, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It is different though. And like, it's different for you. It's different for them.
Right.
So we want to give you some tools so that like you can be ready when the pushback happens. And just to kind of like make you aware of some like feelings that might happen.
Yeah.
One that I have had to rely on a lot is the idea of like repeating, but not defending. So like when you're setting a boundary, I think it's okay to have like a decent conversation about it if you need to. Like if it's with somebody who's really close to you, you can be like, hey, every time you're around my child, I'm just using this example because it's my favorite one. So like every time you're around my kid, you talk about this, this, and this. I've asked you not to because I think it's really inappropriate or whatever it is. Like,
yeah.
Like I've told you repeatedly not to do that. So next time, if this happens, then we are going to head out early.
Yep.
Like, so I think one conversation to kind of defend yourself might be okay, or just to explain why you're setting the boundary. But in the future, when it comes up, you can repeat yourself, but you don't need to sit there and defend your decision if you feel like that's what's right for you and for your family.
Right.
You know, and so in that scenario, you could just be like, oh, hey, you know, friendly reminder, if you keep talking like that, then like we're going to pack up and head out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're going to get pushback and be like, it was only one time. No. Like whatever it is. And then you can just be like, yeah, like, thank you so much. If you continue to talk like that, we're going to go.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to defend yourself. You can just repeat yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think a big one is to set boundaries early. I think it's easier to set expectations from the start than to undo unhealthy patterns. So if you're in a job, a relationship, or a friendship, start setting boundaries early and practicing those. I think if you can get ahead of the game, even if it's something that someone hasn't done wrong yet, it might come up. And so to just be able to set those expectations early on is super helpful. I also think that like it's okay if you're already like down the road, because that's going to happen too with relationships and friendships, and you have to set them later.
Yeah.
Like that's going to happen. But if you can, I would try and start early.
I think another one that we kind of already touched on, but kind of in a different way here, is using I statements to avoid blame. So instead of like, you're asking too much from me.
Yeah.
Or like, you are demanding, or blah, 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 blah. Like try like, I am unable to commit to that right now.
Right.
So I think if you can kind of start to not like just blame yourself, because I don't think that's good to just like always throw yourself under the bus.
No.
But like in situations where it's okay, or like where it would make sense.
Yeah.
Like I think we talked about maybe in the last one where it's like, no, I'm so sorry. My calendar is full right now. Like you can take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without hurting other people's feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think another one would be to offer alternatives if it seems applicable and like you would like to do that. A boundary isn't always a hard no. So if you still want to engage, but on your terms, just offer an alternative. You could say something like, I can't talk right now, but let's catch up on Sunday.
Yeah. I think that's like, anytime people have done that to me, I haven't been like, okay, selfish.
Yeah.
Setting a boundary. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been like, oh, cool, they're busy today. We're going to chat on Sunday.
Right.
And then when they follow through on it, I'm like, great, we chatted on Sunday. Everything's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I did that this morning.
Like with me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was having
That's
a
great.
rough morning and I had a long night. And so this morning, because I was supposed to be here at 9 o'clock for us to work, and I was like, I'm having a rough morning. I will see you at 10 or later.
Yeah. And it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're still going to get our stuff done, and it's not a big deal.
And I'm not the rudest person ever.
You're not. And I wasn't like, oh, she's so selfish.
Right.
Like, yeah. I was like, cool, thanks for letting me know. Okay. Another one is to not over explain yourself, which I have already touched on.
Yeah.
But I remember like 5 years ago when I heard like this was first becoming popular, where it was like, no is a full sentence.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, yeah, it is a full sentence. So you don't need to give a 10-minute speech, like maybe like one explanation conversation
Right,
to your
yep.
friend or your dear family member. Right. Like you don't need to give a 10-minute speech about why you're setting a boundary. A simple, I won't be able to do that is fine.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
And people are going to be mad sometimes, and it's fine. It doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you mean. Yeah.
Agreed. I think a really important one is to prepare for guilt, but don't give into it.
That's so hard.
Guilt will be a natural response when you start setting boundaries, especially if you're used to people pleasing.
No. Couldn't be us.
Let yourself feel it, but don't mistake guilt for doing something wrong.
Yeah. And like, not to just blame other people here, but like some people are kind of masters at using guilt to get what they want.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and like I can think of a few people in my life that have just mastered the guilt trip.
I feel like yes. And I feel like we're all guilty of that at some point, though.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah,
I
I
feel
think
like-
with specific things.
So I think we need to really be conscious of that.
yes.
Because I feel like sometimes we'll do it and not even realize we're doing it.
Yeah.
But
like
yeah.
someone says no to something and you're like, but
Oh,
come
I'm so
on. I'm
sad.
so sad right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like just be aware of who maybe those people are in your life and just be prepared
Yep.
that like if you do set a boundary, the guilt will come
It will come.
and you can just sit with it and it's
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So the next one I would say is to try your best to keep your boundaries consistent. So if you keep bending your own boundaries, then people learn that you don't really have them.
Yep.
And like they don't really have to respect them because they like hardly exist.
Yep.
So I think it's important to just kind of stand firm in what you've said, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yep.
Right?
Even
like,
if you feel guilty.
yeah. So like using the scenario from earlier, you say, hi, if you keep talking like that, I have to leave. Guess what? Like you have to get up and go if it happens
Yeah.
again. You have to do it. Even if you don't want to, even if it makes you feel weird, even if you feel really uncomfortable, like if you said that you're going to do it, you have to get up and you have to leave.
I think something that sounds a little counterintuitive of what you just said, but isn't, it's a little bit different, is to give yourself permission to change your mind.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like you can set boundaries and then grow as a human, or your kid grows as a human, or whatever, or new studies come out of whatever it is, and you can adjust those boundaries depending on you and your family and studies and the new information that you have, because we're all growing, so boundaries can grow too. If you are maybe like expecting to have a kid or whatever, and you have all these ideas of like, oh yeah, I'll probably let that happen, or I won't let that happen. But then you have a kid and it's like, it's completely different once they're like with you.
Yes.
And you go to your family and are like, actually, so I'm not okay with this. And this is not okay with me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because your brain had time to figure out what you actually wanted. And that's okay.
Yeah. I love that. I like the idea of like operating off of new information too. Because like we're all learning and like, yeah, like new things come out all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah, I really like that. All right. We know it's not easy. We know it's not easy, but just practice and like practice sitting in the guilt, because I think that's the first feeling that comes.
Yep. Okay. I think the key takeaway here is that boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about protecting your energy and keeping relationships healthy.
And setting boundaries with love doesn't mean you don't care.
Right.
Okay. It actually means you do care a great deal. So if you're willing to set a boundary with someone, it means you care about that relationship. Because the alternative is resentment, which we've all felt before. So like, why would you want to feel that?
Yeah.
So like, instead of feeling resentful, set a boundary, find a way to make the relationship healthy.
Absolutely. Setting a boundary means you want to keep that person in your life, because otherwise you would just completely shut them out.
Yeah.
If you struggle with setting boundaries, start small. Even saying, I can't do that right now, is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes some practice, but I think it's definitely worth it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're enjoying LightHearted, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps us reach more people that need a little more light in their lives.
And be sure to follow us on Instagram at LightHeartedPod. If you want episode updates and fun behind the scenes content, I feel like we're always just doing weird stuff over there. So come join us on Instagram. And then if you want to hang out with us while we get ready to film these episodes, you can go to our own personal TikTok accounts, and those will be linked below.
And don't forget to stay lighthearted. This podcast was recorded on Buzzsprout in West Virginia.